Noctua NHD15 Chromax Black. This has been my go-to air cooler for years because so far it's the best I've found. It's extremely quiet, it looks relatively good in any build, and of course its performance is brutal, handling almost any CPU. However, it has a couple of buts. For example, it's in the expensive category and its aesthetics are quite industrial and not very minimalist. This one right here is the Deepcool Assassin 4, and apparently it could solve all those issues I have with the NHD15 while maintaining a good performance. The question is, will it hold up against Noctua's Titan when it comes to performance? Could we actually have a worthy competitor? Let's find out. Well, to start with one of the things that matter the most to everyone, the Deepcool Assassin 4 cost $99, although it's usually found a little cheaper, and at the time of making this video, it was around 94 bucks. No, it's not a cheap cooler, but it does cost between $26 and $30 less than the Noctua NHD15 Chromax Black, whose price is $129, but it was $119 at the time of making this video. This is around 22 to 24% less than the Noctua, depending on the price you can find it. In Noctua's favor, I can say that the regular NHD15 can be found for around $110 on sale, so if Noctua's traditional aesthetics doesn't bother you, the price difference is considerably reduced. As for the physical aspect of the Assassin 4, we can say it's a curious cooler with several innovations that, at least, I hadn't seen before in coolers this style. For example, the Assassin combines a 120mm fan with a 141, which is not common at all. The 120mm one, which curiously goes in the back, comes with this bracket here that allows you to move it into two different positions with the idea of not interfering with the back of the motherboard, specifically with the VRM heatsink. In our experience, we were always able to leave the fan in the original position, but this will vary depending on the motherboard you have. There's even a list of motherboards which with the Assassin is not compatible at all. It's not very long, but it's there, and you can find it on Deepcool's website. Another curious thing is that the fan has inverted blades, like to suck air, let's say, instead of pushing it. The other fan, as I already said, it's 140mm and it's hidden behind this magnetic bracket. To remove it, you do it with these two clips on the sides, which you press and slide upwards. With this mechanism, the longer fan is embedded lower and the aesthetics of the top of the cooler are not affected. On the contrary, it looks extremely minimalist. Honestly, I do like this system. However, the only thing that leaves a bittersweet taste in my mouth is the fact that I couldn't find neither on Amazon nor on Deepcool's website the exact replacement fans for either of these coolers. I mean, the 120mm one, we could easily replace it with any other because it's standard, only we would have to use it flipped. But the 140mm one, it's made specifically for this Assassin, and there's no spare. This is something that Deepcool should definitely work on. As a counterpart, Deepcool is so confident in his fans that they're offering a 6-year warranty, so replacing the fans shouldn't be a concern for at least a very long time. To give you an idea, Noctua also offers 6-year warranty. Oh, and before I forget, if we wanted to, we could put a third fan on this cooler with the included bracket, which gives it even more dissipation power. Another feature that the Deepcool Assassin 4 has is this switch over here that, in a nutshell, allows you to switch between a more aggressive fan curve mode and a quieter one. The first one allows the fans to reach a maximum of 1700 RPM, and the second one up to 1300. With the NHD15, if you want to achieve something similar, you need to use this low noise adapter that comes included in the box. Or in both cases, you can always configure the fan curve from the BIOS or with some software that you like. Please note that we did all of our testing with the aggressive curve mode, and as you will see in a few minutes, the noise was not really a problem for us. On an aesthetic level, the Deepcool cooler resembles a kind of a super minimalist cube with some very careful attention to details. Like, for example, the shape they gave to the fins, which looked like a kind of a chessboard. The truth is, to my taste, it looks very cool. There's also the detail I already mentioned about the magnetic cover to hide the central fan. And finally, the touch of illumination that the Deepcool logo has when it uses the performance mode, which I think ties everything together in a very positive way. Okay, before moving on to the tests, I'll share with you some technical comparisons of the Assassin 4 with the NHD15, which I found relevant and which perhaps can give you a clue as to how the performance results will be. To begin with, the Assassin 4 is just 1mm shorter than the NHD15. However, Noctua's fans can be moved down a bit, allowing it to gain almost half a centimeter of height if we wanted to. The Assassin 4 is the size it is, so you should make sure that you have the required room in your case if you want to buy it. Other than that, the rest of the measurements are very similar. Although what it's not similar, it's that the Assassin has 7 heat pipes versus the 6 that the Noctua has. As for the fans, well, it's very difficult to compare since Deepcool combines two types of fans in the same cooler. But if we talk about the 140mm fan to put apples with apples, well, the Noctua fan is just a little bit better in terms of airflow, being able to move 82.52 CFM, while the Deepcool moves only 79.1. But the opposite happens with the static pressure, where the Noctua can move 2.08mm of water, while the Deepcool moves 2.44. This is a clear advantage to the Deepcool cooler, since we're using the fans on a heatsink and not on a case. But let's begin with our test results. For your reference, this is what we're using as our test bench for CPU coolers. We test two different scenarios, one with everything in stock settings where we test idle, gaming, and rendering, and another one where we lock in our CPU to the settings you're looking at right now on the screen, and test the fans while rendering with the CPU at 25, 50, and 100% speed. That being said, starting with the first test having all values in stock, at idle, both coolers performed practically the same, and both are at perfectly normal values. If we move on to Fire Strike, the differences start to come to light, and we see a surprising advantage for the Assassin of almost 3 degrees in both the average temperature and the maximum peak temperature. And I say surprisingly because honestly I expected this cooler to perform well, but I did not expect that it would be what for me it's the king of air coolers. However, the story repeats itself during Cinebench 2024, with the Assassin getting a discrete advantage over the NHD15. It should be noted that in both cases the CPU reached its peak consumption of 145 watts, and also in both cases the processor was able to make the maximum boost without a problem, so there was no thermal throttling at all. That means that the performance of the CPU as such with both coolers would be virtually identical. But well, let's move on to the second test, where we standardize everything to really know which cooler is objectively better. And starting with the test at 25%, we see that the Deepcool takes a massive advantage of almost 10 degrees over the Noctua, which would be very surprising if we didn't have an important note to make here. And that is that even when Deepcool's cooler has a maximum RPM of 1700, it has an algorithm that controls the speed of the fan a little bit different than the Noctua's. So when both coolers are at 25%, the Assassin works at around 710 RPM instead of 425 that would be the 25% of 1700. Noctua's NHD15 has a maximum of 1500 RPM, and when we put it at 25%, we get about 420 RPM, which I know it's also not the 25% of 1500, but it's a lot closer. So that explains the big difference between both coolers at 25% speed. This gap, as you will see in a second, reduces quite a lot as the coolers reach higher RPMs. Well, moving on to the 50% speed test, the Assassin still has an advantage over the NHD15, although much more conservative since the RPM gap is narrowing. And finally, with the fans at 100%, the Assassin still has a better result, although not by that much as you can see on screen. Moving on to the subject of noise, I was really surprised here. At idle, it's not uncommon that there's hardly any difference with the ambient noise of the office, since both are very large coolers and both work at very low RPM. However, during our Cinebench 2024 test, the Deepcool also matched the Noctua without a problem, which is a tremendous achievement, since the main selling point of the NHD15 and Noctua's coolers in general is their low sound pressure. And taking into account that the Assassin has more RPM and has fans of two different sizes, well, matching the NHD15's performance when it comes to noise, it's a truly remarkable accomplishment. The truth is that I was pleasantly surprised with the Assassin 4 in every aspect. Aesthetically, it's very beautiful, minimalist, and with a lot of attention to detail. In performance, both in terms of temperatures and sound pressure, it's excellent, beating what, for me, has always been the king of air coolers. And not only that, it has a 6-year warranty, which is the same amount of time the Noctua provides for the NHD15. As for price, while it's not cheap, and for what it costs you could buy some liquid coolers that would surely outperform it, it's still cheaper than the NHD15, so if you don't want to go for a liquid cooler, I think it's a very good option. As cons, the only thing I could criticize is the fact that we don't have replacement fans for sale. However, this is something that Deepcool can change at any moment, and I really hope they do. And finally, if you ask me, the Assassin 4 is an excellent choice, which delivers everything it promises and can compete even with the biggest powers out there in terms of air cooling. If you are interested in any of these products, I'll leave the link down below in the description. And also, please let me know what you think. I'll read you in the comments. My name is Wayan, I'm sending you a big hug, and as always, I will see you in the next video.